Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Happy to have you here today on this Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday, where we are going to be talking about a new diet that I'm sure you're going to start to hear more and more about in the news. And that is because in April of this year, just a few weeks ago, we had I would say groundbreaking new study released, albeit a very small one on just 14 individuals. So I will put that as a little bit of a caveat in there. However, the science behind it and the results were fairly extraordinary. So I have no doubt the study will then be expanded to a much larger group of people, maybe even taking place this year as well. So one of the studies, and the study that I'm going to reference specifically today, was done, again, just 14 individuals. It was 13 men and 1 woman with the average age of about 32 years old. The other caveat is that they were healthy individuals. So we're not talking about people that were quite obese, overweight, with lots of health conditions where they would clearly see improvement on a diet like this. So we're taking fairly healthy individuals, and we're trying to say, what does their blood look like if we're on a specific diet, and maybe even make them even healthier? Well, the reason why this study, which probably would be difficult for many people to implement, but was easier for these 14 people to achieve, was that it was done over Ramadan. And Ramadan, so I think dated for this show, is going on right now. And it's essentially a month-long observation in the Muslim-based community for fasting, prayer, and I believe reflection overall. And so it's a 30-day long period of time where also there is no food, water, or drinking, anything like that from dawn, sunup to sundown. And why I say that this is important is that, and again, I have friends that are Muslim as well, and there are some caveats around that. If someone's not feeling well, if they're elderly, if they're not able to complete the fasting, then that's okay. But for those that can, I believe that they are suggested to follow this particular fasted plan. So the study actually looked at what do the blood markers look like for those people that have one meal before the sun rises, we'll call that dawn, to only having then another meal after the sun sets at dusk, from dawn to dusk. So that's what we're going to call this particular diet. I'm calling it the dawn to dusk diet. And I just want to share with you, because I'm going to get into this. It's very fascinating. And that's why I wanted to bring it to you from an unbiased perspective before we start to get a little bit of out of control with, how when marketers get a little bit of information like this, they, write a book on it, and then they'll probably call it the dawn to dusk diet. And then away we go, right? And then they'll make it to whatever they want. But let me give you the truth behind the study first. So first, there was no calorie restriction, and they didn't give them a specific set of foods that they could or could not eat. So all they did was they stuck to the foods that they would eat for their particular religion, and then they would have those before the sun came up, and then after the sun set. A couple caveats to this. When they looked at it again, there's no calorie restriction, but also in the study, they were still typically finishing their meal within a couple hours before bed. Okay? Then they would eat, of course. They would wake up and they would eat because they have to eat before the sun rises. Now, the next part is that the average was just over 14 hours of fast during the day. And I want to break that down for you because that's very interesting. That's a very interesting part to this diet. Okay? And the last part is, how did it end? Here's the whole reason I'm even bringing it to you. The results are pretty phenomenal. They showed this. They showed that they improved overall DNA repair. The ability of all of their cells, when those cells divide, because cells don't last forever. So when cells divide, They need to be able to replicate, and they need to be able to replicate in a healthy way. So DNA repair improved. Insulin signaling improved. What does that mean? Well, their body's ability to actually uptake glucose into the cells to either store it as energy or use it as fuel improved. Okay, again, not changing their foods. They're just changing when they took in their food. And this was basically for 26 to 28 days. Okay, then they looked at what's called cytoskeleton remodeling. How is the body doing at rebuilding, repairing, and rejuvenating? And it improved. It also improved the immune system. We had better natural killer cell actions, better overall balance of inflammation and immune markers in the body. Improved overall glucose and lipid metabolism. By the way, I will link up this entire study today. Simply, I'll link up all the graphs, all the downloads, everything so that you can dive into it if you'd like. And that'll be at stephencabral.com/1559. stephencabral.com/1559. So improved glucose and lipid metabolism. Now, why is this important? Well, we have type 2 diabetes as one of the top killers in the entire world, spreading from the United States now all over the world, right? Can't catch it, but you can with the standard American diet, which I saw for the very first time, going back a decade now when I was over in China. You could see the very first generation, overweight, playing video games, not physically active. This is the first time I saw this too, the fast food McDonald's. Like, you would actually go to the McDonald's and you'd press a button. You wouldn't even go up. You put your money in, press a button, and right there would be your Big Mac or whatever your food was, right there. There wasn't even like a cashier involved. It was the first time I'd ever seen this. And it was all automated, and it was right there in China. And then I would see the parents and the grandparents. They'd be on a bike. They'd be going to the market. And it was just so clear. And it was very interesting to me. I mean, it was amazing for me to see as a health practitioner, as someone that was becoming a doctor, that was moving into this field, to say, wow, this is what it must have been like maybe in the 60s, 70s, we'll say, where that first generation was really having that unlimited access to that processed food. You know, once refrigeration and all that really started to happen, 50s or so, 60s, things started to change. It was just easier access to food that would last longer. And that's what I saw, again, about a decade ago. And it's been going on now for 20 years or so, but I saw the 10-year-olds, I saw the 15-year-olds that were starting to move in that direction. It was just a stark difference from their parents and grandparents. Unbelievable. So, well, what does that mean? Well, type 2 diabetes leads to a host of other issues. Neurological problems, eyesight-based issues, high blood pressure, high cholesterol can follow. It's all part of metabolic syndrome. Well, the lipid metabolism, that means the people's cholesterol, their fat profile improved. Triglycerides improved, cholesterol improved. Cognitive function went up. So their ability to think and recall and improve memory and Alzheimer's markers went down. Pretty amazing, right? Circadian clock, so the body's ability to regulate waking, sleeping, when to go to bed, when to wake up, when to repair, when to basically catabolism versus anabolism. Anabolism happens when the body's not eating. It's when the body's repairing, when you're not working out and when you're sleeping. And then a big one was what's called anti-cancer proteome improved. And if you've never heard of proteomics before or proteome, it is the expression of essentially proteins in our body that could either become cancerous, signaling for cancer, or for those cancer cells to go through a process of what's called apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. That's supposed to happen. When a cell begins to mutate, when it's not going according to plan, our body has a backup system. And it says, okay, that cell's not dividing properly. It goes under cell destruction. The cell literally sacrifices itself for the good of the rest of the body. Well, that's what happens. And if it misses that process and it begins to become cancerous, luckily we have other cells in the body that target those cancer cells and destroy them. That's in a healthy working body, right? Our body does that for us. So that's the amazing thing. Well, those markers actually improved on this dawn to dusk diet. So what more can we take from this? Well, here's the interesting thing. Let's actually go into the diet. You have to wake up before the sun rises. So let's say the sun rises at 6:30. Well, you're up at 5:30. Okay, you're going to get up at 5:30 and you're going to eat roughly within 20 minutes, 30 minutes upon waking. And you're going to finish that meal pretty much within a half hour that's it. Like you're eating within that half hour. Okay. Sun sets, well, let's say the sun sets around 6:30 at night. You're going to have your meal then. It's oftentimes, not always, but it's sometimes more community, because Ramadan is oftentimes about more of community and having a meal with family. So you might have an hour-long meal there. Okay. So you're going to have that, might finish at 8 o'clock or so at night. Go to bed at 10, somewhere around there, because you need to wake up, remember, before there's sunlight again, but right before the sun rises. So you might get your 7 hours to 8 hours of sleep. But I want to break this down further, because if you look at it, a lot of people are eating, actually eating for no more than an hour, hour and a half during the day. And they have 2 long fasts. The study didn't get enough into the why, okay? So it didn't say why people might be getting greater results from this. But let's break it down a little bit more. We know an overnight fast is a phenomenal way to improve overall health markers, to help lose weight, balance healthy levels of hormones, healthy levels of inflammation, healthy levels of blood sugar markers, etc. And we do that fast when? Well, we do it typically overnight. 6 o'clock at night to 6 in the morning, 7 at night to 7 in the morning, there's 12 hours. Well, let's look at this. If we do that, and we even bring it to, let's say, 14 hours. So again, I read all the research out there. I love listening to very smart people. I have looked at Dr. Sachin Panda's work, and he follows a diet similar to mine. He eats an hour or 2 after waking up, and then he stops eating around 5 or 6 at night. I do the same thing. I break it down to 3 meals, and they're all about 5 hours or so apart. Not quite 5 hours. Breakfast to lunch is a little less than that. It's probably 4 hours or so apart. And then from lunch to dinner might be more like 5 hours. So that allows my blood sugar to fall back nicely to where it should be, never big spikes during the day. It allows time for a little bit of exercise there mid-afternoon. My body's hungry. It's ready then for dinner. All the digestion's already taken place, so I'm not putting new food on top of partially undigested food in my gut. So it's pretty straightforward. And a lot of people in the space, they kind of follow a diet similar to mine, where I do a 12-hour to 14-hour intermittent fast overnight. And again, you don't have to go by what I'm doing or Dr. Sachin Panda is doing. I know Dr. Rhonda Patrick does 14 hours. So again, that's my longest day. I'll go 14 hours. Some days it's just, let's say 12 and a half, 13. Mine's usually, it's between 13 and 14. And that's simply because I've stopped eating at 6 o'clock most nights. And then I eat by 7:38 in the morning. So it's about 13 and a half hours or so. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But let's say I didn't finish dinner until 6:30 that night. Well, simply take it back then a half hour. It's going to be 13 hours. If I finish dinner at 5:30 and I don't eat then it's 14 hours. So I don't think that 30 minutes is a huge game changer, right? So that's the thing, is don't over stress about this. You want it somewhere between 12 and 14 hours. That's normal for most people. I've done many podcasts on who 16 hours works for and who it doesn't work for. So I don't want to bring that up today. That's a whole separate show. So please do feel free to check that out. But let's look at this, because during Ramadan, you might be fasting for, let's say, 8 hours overnight, maybe 10 hours. Okay. So let's say you ate right around, let's just say 7 o'clock. Okay. You ate from 7 to 8 o'clock. And then you fasted until, let's say, 5:30 in the morning. Okay, so the max you're really getting is 9 hours to maybe 10 hours you could squeeze out overnight. But what you're also getting then is about another 13-hour fast. So you're getting 2 big intermittent fasts. So out of your total 24 hours a day, you're getting about 14 hours during the daylight hours, because I want to differentiate daylight hours versus overnight, and maybe 8 hours for overnight. So what they did in this study was essentially look at a couple different switches from how we're looking at intermittent fasting. They're doing their intermittent fasting during the daylight hours. That was different from us extending it more overnight. And the second thing they did is they only did 2 meals per day. So now we have to ask ourselves, what is more important? Is it the 2 meals per day, but spread out? Remember, eating a lunch meal and a dinner meal is not the same as this study. So you can't say, oh, well, I do lunch and dinner, so it's 2 meals. Not the same. Because previous to this, you can look at this as almost 2 12-hour fasts. I would love to see that study. So I wish I was able to fund all these different studies, because in my opinion, eating at, let's say, 7 a.m. and then maybe again at 7 at night, still 3 hours before bed. What if we did that 6:30 a.m. and 6:30 at night? So you ate only 2 meals a day, and you had 2 12-hour fasts. I would love to see that research. And again, this is a great starting point, but it's not an ending point. It's not enough for people to say, because I know this is that's why I'm trying to get this podcast to you before marketers do, because they're going to say, based on these studies, look what happened. Well, here's the thing. About 26 days, that's all it was, had to be healthy to be in the study. And also, average age was 32 years old. Healthy, 32 years old, not a lot of life wear and tear yet, right? Because we don't know about the catabolism. Believe me, this is also a long-term safe diet. In my opinion, not for a lot of people, because you're going to be running on empty for a lot of that day, especially mid-afternoon. And what happens if you're more of that Vata body type, that ectomorph body type, and you are just burning through glucose? And people say, well, you have to become more fat adapted. Listen, I understand. Ectomorphs and Vata body types are very fat adapted. That's why they have very little body fat. But they also burn through glucose because their nervous system is much more primed than the endomorph body type. Okay, and so again, when you look at this from a clinical practice perspective, you see this. And if you've studied Ayurvedic medicine, you know this. And they don't do well with these big fasts. But I've listened to David Sinclair's work. I agree with some of his work, and I don't agree with other of his work because he's coming from it from more of a conventional medicine standpoint. Do I still think he's fantastic and love his work? Of course, right? I don't judge people. We can have differences of opinion. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to move people forward. Every single one of us is trying to do something to serve others. And he's doing it in his way, and I'm trying to do it in mine. I just don't agree with a lot of the pharmaceutical-based route, right? But I can agree with what he's doing is he's oftentimes having breakfast, and then he's having dinner, and he's skipping lunch many days of the week. He's doing what seems like it might be 2 12-hour fasts. That's only one person. You can't take that, right? And I'm doing a little bit different. Like on Mondays, I'll do a 24-hour fast. I would just love to see the next research study be, is the data that we're seeing from this study because they're doing 2 long fasts? That's what they're really doing. Not 1 long overnight fast, which I'm not sure is the best way to do it. I'm really not sure that that's it, because you can become real catabolic real fast. And here's why. I've seen so many women in my practice that have either gone on a keto-based diet, and this is more of a chronic-based keto diet. I'm not talking about going on for a week or a couple days at a time and coming off. I'm not talking about cycling in. I'm talking about a prolonged keto-based diet. And I'm talking about a legitimate one as well. And I've also seen it from women fasting 16 to 20 hours a day and what it does to their thyroid levels. And again, I am impartial. I'm agnostic when it comes to diet plans. I do not care which one it is, as long as it's best for the individual. And as long as it's best for overall health. And that's why I promote the Mediterranean diet so much. Nobody owns that diet plan. Nobody owns it. It's free. That's the thing, is like, you can choose the list. I think I went over that, last Wednesday, right? Well, last Tuesday. And it was simple. It's just like, listen, here's a day in the life of a Mediterranean diet. Simple to follow, your food choices. To our knowledge, it should serve as the foundation of all diets. I did a podcast on that many years ago, right? I think it was episode 637 or something like that, of whether you're doing keto or, maybe even more carnivore, or whether you're doing a legitimate Mediterranean diet or paleo. That should be the basis. It's the diet that we know of that has the most pro-health benefits and the least amount of negatives. But now, what if we did a Mediterranean diet with 2 longer fasts? I don't know if that will come out in the long run, because after a while, and as you start to get more of life stress, is there enough anabolism in that diet to carry you through? Now, there very well may be if there's not a caloric deficit. I mean, let's say the person eats 1,800 calories for the day. Well, you need that 2 900-calorie meals. And then also, in those 2 900-calorie meals, over the lifetime, can you get in enough fruits and vegetables? Because you'd have to get really good then at doing proper food combining, meaning you'd have to start your breakfast with some fruit, wait a little bit, and then eat the rest of your breakfast. Because first of all, you're not going to eat 900 calories in fruit alone for breakfast, right? So then you say, okay, well, no, I just exclude fruit completely from my diet. Well, I don't know if that's healthy to completely get rid of berries, things like that. And you say, okay, well, I'm going to stick to just vegetables. Okay, well, I could get behind that. So can you get, though, 4 cups of vegetables at breakfast and 4 cups at dinner? That might be a challenge to wake up and eat 4 cups of vegetables, because that doesn't include your protein and it doesn't include your healthy fats. So are you able to get all that in? No doubt about it, you can get 900 calories in. That's pretty easy. 900 calories, that's 6 tablespoons of fat. So that's pretty easy, right? 600 times 120 is 720. Well, so that wouldn't be quite it, but you get the gist. It's put it this way. It's 7.5 tablespoons of fat. That's pretty easy to get with, avocado, some olive oil, pretty easy to get, right? That's why fats are easy to add up for calories. But that doesn't necessarily make it a healthy diet just because you're getting your calories in. Again, that's not what a diet is all about. A diet is meant to fuel your body. So my interest in bringing you this today is to just have you hear it first as to what might be on the horizon. And the second is to get you interested in health, that intermittent fasting is where it's at. Now, we're simply playing with the hours. We know most people agree that, and this is a very important point, and I wish I brought it up earlier, is that whether it's myself or whether it's Dr. Sachin Panda or Dr. Rhonda Patrick or whoever it might be, most people agree that you should stop eating 2 to 3 hours minimum before bed. Most people agree with that as a health expert. David Sinclair, etc. Why? Because scientifically we know that if you have food in your stomach, it's okay to have it in your gut. It's going to move down your digestive tract over the next 12 hours or more. But if it's in your stomach, that means there's more blood flow there. And if there's more blood flow there, it starts to increase more core temperature. And if it increases core temperature there, well, most likely you're not going to get as deep and a good quality of sleep. And that's just one parameter, by the way. That's not liver function. That's not detoxification. That's not having to do with glucose levels. I'm just talking about one marker right there. So if you were trying to mimic this diet, and if you're a marketer out there and you want to sell this ebook or whatever it might be, again, I'm not against that, but I want to do what's best for people. That's the bottom line. So you still want people stopping eating 2 to 3 hours before bed. So now we say, okay, get to bed by 10, stop eating by 7, 8 o'clock at the latest. That's the very, very latest. Now we get people eating then again at, let's say, 8 o'clock, or, if you're doing this diet, 6 o'clock the next morning or so. And it would depend on the season, right? The sun rises different times. So now we work that back to 7 o'clock or so. So now we're at 5 hours plus another 6, we're at 11. And you can get just about a 12 and a 12 in there in terms of 2 meals a day. So if you were someone who said, well, I really just want to do 2 meals a day, this might be something that you may try out. And I don't think that, and again, I'm not talking about long-term. I'm not giving this as a medical-based diet. But if you were to say, let me see how my body feels with doing a breakfast, which, by the way, is important. It really is. If you're a stressed person, you don't want to be running on fumes. Please check out my previous podcast on what it does to your hormones, okay? If you start your day relaxed and you are relaxed and you're working on your breathing and your meditation and your yoga, yeah, you can absolutely do a longer fast, no doubt about it, right? But not everybody starts their day that way. And so we want to be cognizant of that. So if you wanted to try that, you could say, and it might just be for a week, let me try eating breakfast, see how I do throughout the day, and then dinner at night. And as long as you get that 2 to 3 hours minimum before bed where you stop eating and you ease into that diet in the morning, easier digestive foods, right? Probably not a steak for breakfast. Then you'll be able to potentially reap all the benefits here. So I wanted to bring this to you. It's certainly not going to be my last podcast on this topic. I found it super interesting. The health markers improvements, even for healthy individuals, was fantastic. I mean, if people that were unhealthy did this, they might not feel very well for the first 2-3 weeks, but their improvements could be even better. So what I'm saying is I'm always keeping myself open, and I want you to know that on the Cabral concept. I will always bring you what looks like reliable science. That's going to be good science, but also just let you know, listen, this is the infancy of looking at this type of a diet plan where it would be a dawn to dusk fast, just AM, breakfast and dinner. But I believe that for most people, it would probably be better than completely fasting until lunch or, doing a 20-hour-a-day fast where the body is just burning up all day long if you're doing that chronically. Again, I'm okay with the once-a-week 24-hour fast where you're going from Sunday night to Monday night. But again, check out all my previous podcasts on all the different ways that you can fast and different ways that absolutely are proven to improve your overall health. And I'll give you more updates on those as well in the future. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm happy to answer questions. I know it was a bit open-ended. I don't always do podcasts like this, but I wanted you to have the latest research and information. Let it kind of, like, what do they call it? Mull it around in your mind for a little bit and think about it. But keep your mind open. It doesn't mean you need to jump into it, but I wanted to share it with you. Fasting is very powerful. Use at least some form of it in your life right now. All right. Take care, everyone. And of course, if this was helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone you believe it could serve. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.